Do you remember where you were the first time you wrote a piece of music?
Yes. I was doing work experience actually. So whenever that was, like 14, 15 maybe, and I did work experience at the local kind of guitar shop. It was something called Essex Music Centre, and it was like a small thing above a furniture shop. And they was pretty, I think they thought I was supposed to be there for 2 days. I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks. So they just said, like, just do whatever you want, just sit in the back room or whatever, you know, you don't even have to come in. But they had all these guitars, and I wrote a song called This Is the Fish. And it wasn't about anything in particular. It was just like mumbles of words, but yeah, and then I sort of, you know, started the band and started writing. But that first one, it went, this is the fish. It was like a grunge song. This is the fish. This is the fish. I mean, it's an awful song, but yeah, you got to start somewhere.
Were you already into music then? If you were
Yeah, massively. The start, I played in a grunge band as a kid, basically, and I sort of started it backwards by graffitied. We formed a band before we could play any instruments, and like graffitied it around the school and told everyone we was in a band. And then it was like, what do we do now? And it was like, I guess we'll start a band. So got like, you know, set up a little 3-piece band and went from there. And that was when I started. It was around that same time, so I started writing songs for that.
Yeah. How did the feeling of writing that first song compare to what it feels like to write music now?
I guess it was similar. Then it was like, I guess I put a bit more heart into it now because I've sort of worked, you know, I've worked it so long, and now that it's like, it was quite easy and quite throwaway, that first one. But there's definitely a similarity. I mean, it obviously sparked something in me. I think there's, you know, it's still that creating something out of nothing is my favourite thing about songwriting. It's, you know, it's like, even, you know, now if you sort of like just one night, if I sit down and think, oh, you know, I'll do a bit of writing tonight, and I'll have an idea for a song in my head, and then I'll end up writing a completely different song about something else that I hadn't even conjured up the ideas for, and then it's like, by that next morning, it's just this sort of living and breathing song that's like, it still amazes me how it happens. I don't really know how still, but yeah, I guess there's, you know, in many ways it was similar, and in many ways it was different as well.
Are you still writing stuff every day? Is that something you kind of do?
No, I mean, I don't sit down. No, I'm quite the opposite actually. I do like, I'm always thinking about something or other, and generally making little notes and whatnot. But I'll go for like weeks, and then I'll sit down and sometimes write 2 or 3 songs like over the course of a couple of days or a couple of nights. Mainly, it's not very often I get to sit down, have a smoke, and play guitar. But I find that if I do it all the time, it's not necessarily productive. It's more like almost of a sort of weight, and then something builds up, and then you go write a couple, and then you know, like the sort of fine tuning of the songs and whatnot, I guess, comes a little bit later. But so always writing in some sense, and then all, you know, like actually doing what you would call, I guess, the work side of it, not very often.
Yeah. One of the things that is kind of been a constant through from like the first album to the 10th album?
11th just came out. Yeah.
Is this kind of, it's the way you kind of write songs with your lyricism, it's not brutal, but kind of honest and upfront and kind of matter of fact kind of way of speaking in the songs. Is that something that was present from the beginning? Do you think, even before the first album? Or?
No, I mean, certainly as Beans on Toast, yeah. Not really in the kind of grunge band that I was talking about. That was a bit more songs about nothing sort of vibe, and I think I was just more sort of learning a bit with that. And then we had the Beans on Toast. But yeah, it has. I think it's just kind of, it's sort of say what you see songwriting. It's like I just keep it really simple, and therefore people know what you're talking about, and therefore it's like that's the same thing. It's kind of like, I listen to a lot of country music, and most country music is quite clear cut. It's not like mixing your messages up with sort of poetry to kind of like to paint pictures. It's more just sort of like, this is a chair and I'm going to sit on it and sing that, you know, just sort of, yeah, say what you see and just honest.
Yeah. I mean, your music is quite heavily tied to the lyrics. Like a lot of the meaning and the kind of juice of it is rooted in there.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You've played all over the world. What do you think it is that gives your music this ability to kind of transcend language and for you to go to like different countries and people that still resonate with it?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure it does, to be honest. I mean, when I've played all over the world in English-speaking countries, and then mainland Europe. I mean, sort of, as far as mainland Europe, Germany in particular, I just presumed, why would anybody care? You know, and I just sort of, I used to tour everywhere else. I toured the States, toured the UK, played in like South Africa and places like that. But I was just like, why go to Germany? Because no one would care. And then I went there for the first time, this tour come through, and it was like, all right, you know what, I'm not going to turn it down. And it was the polar opposite. It was like, one, everybody could just speak really good English, certainly the people that come to the gig. And because they wanted, it turned out the crowds were really attentive because they wanted to make sure they understood it. So it was like super attentive crowds, and just like something about sort of German culture, they just mean they're real music lovers. They come out to gigs and they, you know, like they just, it turned into some of my favourite places to play, and I've been back every year since. But that's still, I think if I was playing a gig and someone didn't understand a word of English, then they're not really going to be entertained. They might for like a half-hour show, but they wouldn't be like, I've got to go back and watch that guy I can understand, if you know what I mean. Because it is, you know, it's maybe a different story now because I'm touring with a band of amazing musicians, and this out is like an album tour, but the kind of, you know, a core beans on toast gig, I think, is about the words, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like from the name of the band to the lyrics, there's like a lot of English, you know, colloquialisms.
Sure, yeah.
Do you think your music's become more or less English, you know, as the albums have gone on?
Again, it's consistent. I think, I mean, like, so with that, and like with touring in America, it was like, are people going to get it? And the first time I toured out in America, I was sort of hamming up the English stuff, like doing something about Prince Harry and stuff like that, and sort of making a bit of a meal out of that. And then from spending a fair bit of time in the States, I then started writing songs about America. Like I got a song about New Orleans, where I went for my honeymoon, a song about my trip to Nashville, and one about sort of traveling around the whole of the States. So then that kind of fills that gap as well, because it's like, oh, it's all these English references, and it's like, well, here's a tune about stuff that, you know, like really American stuff. So that kind of worked. And also, you know, growing up on American music and films, it was quite easy to sort of tap into that culture as well.
Do you tend to find that you process like most kind of life experiences and stuff through music as well? Because obviously when you had a child, that found its way into music, and even like politics on the last album, that's kind of all
100%, yeah. Just, you know, it's just what I'm thinking. That's ultimately, you know, what I'm writing songs about, what's happening and what I'm thinking. Be that on my doorstep, like my child, or be that, you know, like climate chaos, you know, sort of like on the world stage, you know, it's just whatever's thinking, just write it down in a song and try not to be too clever about it.
Do you think music's quite an effective way of, you know, spreading messages and kind of, or tackling things?
It certainly can be. I mean, I don't feel like, it's not like I sort of pin myself as someone out here sharing messages that I think, you know, like people need to hear. I like the victim, if anything, if I was going to sort of like big up myself on a gig, it's more the kind of just, you know, people just kept coming together for a kind of community sort of like evening out, really, rather than sort of like come to hear messages or anything like that. But yeah, you know, certainly, you know, it's a brilliant way of sharing your ideas, music, yeah.
As is writing a book.
Yeah,
you've obviously done as well.
I did that as well, yeah.
How did that differ to songwriting and the kind of process for creating that?
Completely different. It felt like it was because it wasn't very creative. Like I'd been telling them stories for so long, I knew them like the back of my hand. So writing them up, it wasn't like I needed to create anything. It was more. It was a little bit like homework. Like I just set myself a task. I did most of it on tour in Germany, because I was on the train every day for like 3 or 4 hours, and I was just like, just felt like I needed a project to get stuck into. So it was just like, yeah, just started writing it there, and it was like, yeah, and then I realised that it was something that could happen, and it was, and then because normally with a song you can finish it and then it's done, but you know, I'm pretty bad at spelling and grammar and stuff like that, so I had to work with someone else to get through that, and I had to reread it so many times, and oh man, and then read it for the audio book, and it was like, talk about like the sound of your own voice, you know, it was sort of, I was doing my own heading on a massive scale, and it was like, but ultimately worth it, and I'm sure that, you know, like real authors suffer a lot more than sort of having to do that, but because it was sort of quite far out of my kind of comfort zone, and completely different from writing a song. But also at the same time, when the books arrived, and it felt like, it wasn't like, oh, here's my new album, when they arrived, which is always good. It felt a little bit like, wow, you know, like I sort of know that I can write albums and release albums, but I surprised myself by writing a book. And when it turned up and we had all these boxes of books turned up in my house, I was really like, it looks legit. Because that was the other thing. I've done, you know, some books you could just look at them and they're like, it just looks like you've made this yourself. And I didn't know until that day that it turned up whether it was actually going to you know, looked like a book that if it wasn't on a bookshelf, if it was on a bookshelf, people would be like, what, you know, you made that one yourself. It was like, no, it's like, it's legit, it's real, yeah. So I was, pretty happy.
How did that feeling compare to like getting your first album back?
I'd say it was kind of better, like in a way, not knocking the, you know, sort of releasing an album. That was all like, that felt like something that I was always going to do, and it was like quite, you know, like, it wasn't like, oh my God, I've put an album out. You know, it's like I've been writing songs for ages, been touring for ages. Like, yeah, you're going to do an album, that's kind of next. It was still great, don't get me wrong. But yeah, the books, it was just like, yeah, just because I surprised myself. It was like...
Did you find there was any crossover like in the songwriting and what you spoke about in the book? Like were there certain stories that you've maybe written songs about that also cropped up in the book at all, or?
I mean, a lot of the stories are about songs and the kind of travels that they've taken me on. But I can't say that it was like, no, maybe not. Sort of like, I'd like to think it was sort of, because it's a big trip down memory lane writing a book about your own life. So I would have thought that it would have ended up with some sort of nostalgic songs of some sort, but can't say that it did yet, you know, maybe.
And in terms of your broader musical career, how much of that did you map out from the start? Because obviously you've had an album come out every year on your birthday, the covers all match up together nicely. Was that all planned?
No, not at all. Yeah, not at all. I mean, even the first album only really came out because Extra Mile, the label that put it out, suggested I do it because I got a tour. I was supporting Frank Turner on tour, and they was like, we will release an album because you'll sell enough on this tour to make it worthwhile. So I was just like, I'll just record all the songs I had, which was like 50 songs at the time.
That tour was long, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think at the time I had like 48 songs. So I was like, well, I'll just write 2 more and we'll put that out. And then it was just, you know, the artwork for that was, again, it was like, I'll just write a name on the, at the time I used to graffiti Beans on Toast everywhere. So just put that on the cover. And then it was just a year later, the next album was ready around the same time. So it was just like, well, we'll just put it out again. It worked last time, let's just do the same thing. And then once you do it the third time, then it's just a thing. And, you know, and the same with the artwork. It's like, what are we going to do? It's like, well, it worked last time, do it again. And then it was like, was a thing. It was like, well, we've got the sort of colours to rotate through. I've used most colours now, though, unless you start getting into different shades of stuff. So I'm going to have to start putting a little bit more work into my artwork. But yeah, it was, I mean, once it was year 3, and because the weird thing about doing an album a year is it's actually really it's got loads of benefits to it, as well as it being like, feels like my natural output for, you know, sort of like how many songs I'm going to write in a year. But also it's just like, it means you can really like plan ahead. Like, and I just know that every year around September I'm going to be in the studio and it will be out in December, and then we can book tours for December then, because they always know there's going to be an album at that time. And it just like, it also means I play a lot of festivals year in, year out, which normally, you know, they don't want the same bands year in, year out, which is fair dues, but somehow I kind of dodge that
big
rule.
Glastonbury to be honest.
Yeah, Glastonbury's a bit different because there's so many stages there. I think there's probably a lot of bands that play there every year, but there's like, I mean, Boomtown I've played for 9 years on the trot. Secret Garden, which doesn't exist anymore, but I played there 13 years, like every year. And by having a new album every year is, you know, in the eyes of the festival bookers, it's got to be like, well, at least, you know, you're not going to get the same show. So there's an element of that, you know, it just keeps me, it means that I'm constantly, you know, gigging, writing, recording, releasing music, which I love doing. And it's just like, so just do it to a kind of schedule that works. But yeah, it just fell into place that way. I saw the benefits of it and then just stuck with it, basically.
Yeah. I mentioned briefly all the albums have come out on your birthday.
And that was because the first album was, it was like, it's quite an important time for when you're starting off as a musician. You rely on friends and family to come to gigs because, you know, who the fuck else is going to come to a gig? So, you can cream that out. It was like, you know, you used to text all your mates, and, you know, I was in my sort of 20s at the time, so it was like there'd be big circles of friends and everyone was up for going out and stuff. So you sort of do text out and get people to the gig that way, but you can't just constantly rely on your friends to come to the gig. And I was in this weird sort of like in between the two, where people that I had never met had started listening to my music and come to gigs, maybe not enough to fill a room, but some. And my mates had started waning off from coming because they feel like they'd done their bit and they couldn't be bothered to watch another Beans on Toast gig. So I did a birthday party, and I was like, well, my mates will come and I'll advertise it as a gig. And it was kind of like more bums on seats, you know, to make the album launch a bit more, you know, a bit more spicy. and it was just ready that time. So it was like, that was why it did that. And then, and then again it worked, and it was just like the next year. And then now we're sort of honed it down to doing special album release parties around the country and stuff. So yeah, it's all good.
What's been your best birthday out of the 11 albums?
I mean, the one just gone. The next one, actually, I'll be 40 next year, so we'll look forward to the next one. But I think the last two we've done when we've been doing these album launches, because I just always did album launches in London, which is where I live. But it just, I was like, why would we presume that you have to do it there? So then the next one we did, worked with my agent, and we was like, we did it in Nuneaton, because it's the most central part of the whole of England. We was like, well, if we're not going to do it in London, we'll do it right in the middle of the country, and then people can kind of come from all over. Nuneaton's a place that normally you wouldn't kind of gig, so it's quite a surprise. Everybody travelled in for it, and it was just a really great night. So we just sort of mimicked that idea, and we did it in Hebden Bridge this year, and then we'll do the same next year. Maybe we'll do it here in Edinburgh.
Be a good one. I've got one left. Has the reason you make music changed, and if so, why?
I mean, if you're going back to when I was, like you said, writing that first, I think I was probably just trying to get laid as a kid, to be honest. I guess since then it's changed. Yeah, it has. It has. I think now it's it's my life, and it's what I do for a living, and it's it's turned into such. It was quite throwaway to begin with. It was like, I just write these songs and play them down the pub, and I guess the writing hasn't, but the kind of the love that goes into it. Now that there's lucky to have brilliant musicians that put their kind of love and time and their talent into my songs. So I need to rise up to that to be able to work with them. So it's changed, but for the better.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.